Hello, I'm Sean. I'm here today to do a service on a Yanmar C50R. I'm going to be doing the fuel filters and the air filters.
To easily and quickly book a mechanic, visit tecamohd.com. Welcome to Service Call, a mechanic's guide to service, troubleshooting, and repair. And on this episode,
Now you can see all the dust and stuff come out when most guys don't do that. They just hop in and run the machine. Is swearing frowned upon? I don't feel like swearing just yet. So this is an indication that there's a bunch of blockage, probably some debris. So instead of using gloves, sometimes for dexterity purposes, sometimes gloves get in the way or they tear really often depending on the work you're doing. So if I'm doing some like lighter work where there's lots of oil, I like to use this PR88. It's a cream that you put on your hands rather than putting on gloves. Protects against, well, it says right here, it protects against oil, fat, grease, paint, lacquer, tar, adhesives, resins, fiberglass, polyester, silicone compounds, soot, and dust. So the only thing that washes this off is water. So if it's dry out like today and you're working with a light amount of oil, which I am, I will be using PR88 instead of gloves. You just need a small amount on your hands. You just rub it in. Make sure you get between your fingers, back of your hand. Depending on the work I'm doing, sometimes I go down below the wrist. Most days I don't. Just bottom of the palm, back of the hand, all fingers. Make sure you get it pretty thoroughly covered. And then it dries within a few minutes, and it's like wearing a glove without wearing a glove. If there's any chance of you coming into contact with water, it's probably best to use latex gloves. But yeah, if you're just spinning filters on a machine and the chances of you contacting water are low, PR88 is just fine. The air filters and the fuel filters are very accessible right here in the front right compartment of the machine. And this is the air filter. Oh boy, that is looking pretty dirty. Oh boy, and their air filter as well. Just make sure that it goes in fully, seats all the way. Sometimes they'll sit kind of cocked like that. Just make sure they're nice and straight, centered, and in all the way. Yeah, that's pretty bad, but I've definitely seen worse. That's what it should look like. That's what it does look like. And then you can see all the dust and stuff come out that is really dirty. If you don't change the air filter, the engine has a hard time breathing. So what you end up doing is you tend to get a lot of black smoke, which is overabundance of fuel. Air filter is one of the easiest things to do on these things. I would check it on a regular basis. Like honestly, there should be, on all equipment, there should be like a pre-trip, which is a walk around at the beginning of your shift. Most guys don't do that. They just hop in and run the machine. But I would say on a regular basis, the service manual is going to tell you a regular service interval for it. And I'm not going to speculate what it is on this, but I would say it's at least once a week. At least.
sometimes the cap may not have a position indicator, or that indicator has peeled off.
If it was peeled off, I go where the dust drain is on the bottom. So what this is when dirty air comes in, it fills the housing and then it has to pass through the filter element. So as all this dirty air is coming in, the dust is being knocked out of it, right? A lot of it is getting sucked into the filter and some of it's just staying in the housing and it tends to collect here. Then you just open up this dust ejector and it falls out. We are done with the air filter, and we are going to go on to the fuel filters. Well, the first one we're going to do, I think, will be this one right here. This is not the correct tool for the job, but I am using it because it does work. There is it's a stamped galvanized steel spanner that slips over here, and it's got notches in it that correlate to these bumps in the plastic here. And then it uses these to turn it, and that spreads the load out over all of them.
To show you all what the proper tool looks like, Sean went to pick one up at a local dealer.
Well, this is the actual correct tool for the job. This is a filter spanner, and I'm going to show you how to use it. So it slips on over the bottom of the filter, and these little notches in the spanner correlate to bumps on the outside of the fuel bowl. So that slips over, and you then loosen it with this wrench. Now, being that this was a really tight removal this time and last time, there was a really high risk of actually cracking the bowl using the pliers that I was using. We were lucky that that didn't happen, but I have lots of experience, and I have done that numerous times, and I haven't broken one in a very, very long time. So this is the correct wrench for the job. Spreads the load out more evenly and significantly reduces the risk of breaking anything. Same tool is used for this other filter here. Unfortunately, this one is packed up against some foam. Makes it a little more difficult to get it on, but it's the same procedure. Just tighten and loosen and tighten. Same filters are used on, or same style filters are used on Hitachi excavators, numerous other lines of equipment.
Thanks, Sean. Now back to the service.
That one was pretty stiff. Well, when we're doing this, it's got to be careful not to crack it or break it, and that's why you try not to use these unless you've done it lots of times before and you know what to do. There's a drain here on the bottom of the filter housing, and this will make it so that all the fuel that is inside this filter drains out, so that when I take it off, I'm not holding onto a bowl of fuel. There we go. And while we're in here, I'm going to drain this other one too. Same sort of deal. Changing fuel filters is pretty easy. I would say one of the easier things, just spinning filters, is pretty easy task. Most people can do it. If you didn't change your fuel filter, like in the situation with this one here, you can see that there's a bunch of emulsified fuel in there. What that means is that there's been a lot of water contamination, and that water does not pass through the filter element, and it blocks the fuel from flowing through there. So what will eventually happen is your engine will start for fuel and stall. And this one here, okay, well, this one here is plugged. It's got a lot of junk in the bottom of it, as you can see, so I'm just gonna stick a small screwdriver up through the hole there, see if I can get it draining. Kind of see it bubbling out a little. There's also a bleed screw on the top of this housing. Maybe if I loosen that off, it will allow air in, which will speed up the draining process, ideally. There we go. That was really bad. Really bad. because a filter can get that bad if there's a lot of water in the fuel system itself. So realistically, after we change these filters to ensure that we don't get more water into the water separators on these filters here, is there should be a drain on the bottom of the tank, allowing us to drain off any water and debris that accumulates in the tank.
Sometimes things don't go the way you expect them to, and you'll have to dig a little deeper to figure out why,
This one's still going.
and to find alternative solutions.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any reason why it continues to pour. It should just be emptying out the filter housing, because it's not gravity fed. Because the fuel level in the tank is higher than the inlet of the fuel filter here, we're going to pinch the line off, and that'll stop fuel from flowing over into the fuel filter. There we go. I'm taking this one off first because it'll give me better access to this one here. I'll have more room to swing the wrench. There we go. Finally loose enough to get with my hands. And we wait some more for it to drain. So to properly dispose of the waste fuel and oil, there are facilities for that. And there's a website. We'll add a link to that website in the description below. So I'm back to removing the fuel filter. There we go. You can see all the sludge in the fuel filter there. That's all over this thing. It's just loaded with it. All right, so now that filter housing's out of the way, it gives me better access to this one here. So I'm gonna remove it. These realistically are never this tight. This is kind of crazy. Because it's been on there for a really long time, or because of being over tightened. Man, gotta be really careful you don't break these. You can always buy another one. They're not impossible to get, but just want to do your best not to cost yourself more money. Man. Is swearing frowned upon? I don't feel like swearing just yet. I'm going with it's been on there for a really long time. Because if it was over tightened, we would have been able to get it loose and then spin it off freely by now. Now, this one is still pretty bad. It's pretty water saturated, but doesn't have quite all the schmoo that one did. So which one's that? That's okay. And that's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to clean these bowls, remove the O-rings. So I'm just using some parts cleaner to get a bunch of the contaminants out of there. I'll wipe it out with a clean rag. Making sure that there is nothing in the bowl it's good practice. Because what's the point in putting in a brand new clean filter if you're just gonna throw it in a dirty filter housing? And we want to make sure that the O-ring groove is nice and clean. Wipe it out. So you can, there's like gunk stuck to the inside corners. There's like ridges inside of here that give it structural strength, and it just kind of piles up in the little corners. All right, with that nice and clean, I'm going to put the new O-ring on. Oh, one quick sec. See a little bit of crap in the bottom. There's a little bit of stuff stuck in the threads for the drain. So with all new filters come a set of O-rings, and they're in the box. So this is the O-ring that goes around the outer edge here, and then this O-ring here. Well, this is more of a gasket, but this will be going on right here on the drain that goes on the bottom. You could reuse your old O-rings in a pinch if you absolutely had to, but I would recommend changing them every opportunity. Otherwise, you end up neglecting it, and then it gets really difficult to take off again like we had here. Okay, so another good practice is to put a little bit of a lubricant, oil, fuel, anything like that on here. It just makes it so that the O-ring seats more cleanly and evenly. It just goes in there without twisting and binding, because you can roll these O-rings too. And as you're putting them in, if they start to roll a little bit, it changes the shape of the O-ring. It's no longer round, it becomes more of a lobe shape if you were to take a cross section of it. And then you can get some leaking past there. We don't want air coming in, and we don't want fuel coming out. So just best to make sure that it's well lubricated. All right, with this particular style of housing, it's got threads on the inside of the housing, and there's an area there where this O-ring will seat. And if it's not clean, it's going to be difficult going in. So it's always a good idea to wipe out inside there and make sure that there's no contamination that's going to stop this from seating properly. So now I'm just going to reinstall the second filter that I pulled out right here. And I used a little bit of light motor oil on the O-ring for lubrication. So usually you just tighten it up till the O-ring seats. So right here is a gasket for the drain. I'm just going to pull that off. There we go. I'm just going to clean that a little bit with some parts cleaner. And again, it can't hurt to just put a light little coat of oil on there. Not as critical as putting it on the other O-ring. So this is the drain here on the bottom of the filter housing. It just threads in and seats. You want it to be fully seated, because if it isn't, it's going to continuously drain. It's a hand-tight kind of thing. So under here is a water drain off the bottom of the fuel tank. So because we found so much stuff in the filters, chances are pretty good that there's a lot of stuff inside the bottom of the tank here. So there's a drain cock on the bottom, and when I open it, there's barely a trickle, and it should be a good steady stream coming out of there. So this is an indication that there's a bunch of blockage, probably some debris. So I'm just gonna try and fish a zip tie up inside. See if I can unplug it. Unfortunately, this zip tie is not cutting the mustard. All right, we're gonna have to try something else. Okay, you can see here all of that is water. It won't absorb into the pad. This pad will absorb oil and fuel, but it will not absorb water. So the reason why it's rolling around on there is because it's not fuel. Oh man. I'll get a little more steady stream. Oh, there we go. There's a lot of water in there. So this is a mixture of water and fuel. Fuel should be clear, and this is very cloudy, so it's got water contamination. And this is what's in the bottom of the tank. So I'm just going to keep draining it till all that's gone. And we get a nice steady stream of clean fuel, which I think we're definitely getting there. That's looking pretty clear. I think I'm going to drain this pail here and see what we're getting coming out now. There we go, that's a little more clear. Definitely a lot more fuel coming out now. That's a lot better. You can't really tell because there was still a little bit of the cloudy stuff that came out, but there is a healthy amount of fuel coming out of there now. I'm pretty confident that we got the water and debris off the bottom of the tank. Maybe we could do one last check just to make sure. Yeah, that's pretty clean. Yeah, I mean, there's still, this wasn't a super clean tray when I started, so it's a little bit deceiving, but it's definitely a lot cleaner. So on this drain on the bottom of the fuel tank here, there is provisions for a cap to go in there. This cap is missing. I would recommend putting like at least a plastic cap or purchasing the correct cap to fill this space. That will prevent a bunch of stuff from going up inside there and blocking the valve. And if the valve does for any reason get turned, because it's actually very accessible, like a branch could come up here and hit this and open the valve, and then you have a big mess and your fuel's all over the place. So it's definitely a good thing. I would actually, because of how exposed this is, I would say putting in the proper cap would be far better than just using a plastic plug. So now we're going to prime the filters now that we know we're not going to be sucking up any junk from the tank. And so this right here, this knob, you turn this to the left. This is your hand primer pump. So as you turn this, it releases it and it's going to pop out, and then you're able to pump it like that. This is the first filter coming from the tank. So as I'm priming, this will be the first filter to fill. And it can take some time. It's kind of a tedious process. There are some people that believe that you just fill the filter housing with fuel and drop the filter in and put it in. But when you do that, there's a potential for introducing contaminants into the fuel system. So priming it this way reduces that risk. And when we're priming this, we're not just looking to fill the glass. Eventually, when this is full, we have a bleeder screw up here, and we should see a little bit of fuel come out right here. When it starts coming out there, we know we can, well, there will be a bit of air that is trapped in there that is coming out through here. It's bleeding off the air. So as this is coming up, you're going to get fuel and air coming up. You'll get a few bubbles coming out here, and then once you have a good steady stream of fuel, that's when you know it's good. There we go. Tighten that one. This one here. Now I continue pumping, and I pull this bleed screw here, and when this is full, we should see fuel come out of here. Same deal. You want to see a steady stream of fuel. Not saying we want to shoot out like a squirt gun, but you want to see fuel come out of there without bubbles. And this one's a little bit deceiving because the bowl is very short, but the filter, it goes all the way up into here. So we're not just filling this, we're filling all of this. Oh, here we go. It looks like perhaps this is blocked here, because I can see it bubbling out around the threads of this bleeder screw. I'm going to take the same piece of wire that I used for cleaning out the drain to try and clear that. There we go. It's clear now. So now when I pump it, you see a steady stream of fuel. That's done. And we push it all the way in, turn it to the right and tighten it until it stops. Tighten up the bleed screw here. Just finger tight for now. Tighten that one finger tight. And then we come along with wrenches and snug them up. They do not need to be crazy tight, just snug. You over tighten them, you will pull the threads out of the housing, and then you'll be replacing that whole housing. So that is pretty well it. Now it's just kind of tidy up and run the machine. Okay, so to cap off the air filter and fuel filter replacement, it's always a good idea to start the machine, check for leaks. There may be a bleeder screw that's not quite all the way in, which we did snug up. Maybe the seal isn't fully seated. So just things to check, but we should start the machine and go over there and check them. It's good. Everything's good. So that is completed fuel filter, air filter change on a Yanmar C50R. To support this channel, please like, comment, and subscribe.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode where Sean comes back to replace the hydraulic filters on a C50R.
All right. So that's it for underneath. Got one panel to put up on the top. But actually first, before I do that,